Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Two Tutors Talking. I am your host, Audrey Codner, and we have a special guest with us. We have Jo-anne. See, I'm about to say it wrong again. I keep doing it. Venevol. No, say it for me. I'm
Ventevogel.
telling you, Ventevogel.
They
I'm
call me
telling you, in
Jo-anne
my
V.
mind, it just doesn't go. Vente. Vente is like the coffee. Okay. Ventevogel from Tutor for Math and more. Welcome to Two Tutors Talking. I greatly appreciate you being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Jo-anne.
Hey, Audrey. It is great to be with you here today. Um, I am a longtime math tutor. I've been tutoring for over 25 years. My forte is pre algebra to pre calculus and ACT, SAT math prep. Other things related to those things.
And I'm like, you have that whole variation. It just seems like, because how long have you been doing the tutoring for a bit? You've been tutoring for a bit.
I started 30 years ago. So I've been tutoring for over 25 years.
Oh, nice. So
Couple
did
years.
you always do online or did you do in person?
Um, Probably online for the past 10 years, more than that.
Okay.
Not only online, but I have done online actually for more than that. I'd say 10 or more years.
Okay. And then what did you do before tutoring?
Oh,
Were you
I
like,
was, yeah, sorry.
sorry.
Um, I used to be a business consultant and a proofreader and an energy management programmer.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So why tutoring? Like, what kind of attracted you? Because I love to hear everyone's story of why they just started to do whatever business they wanted to do. So why tutoring?
Um, I had helped my brother and I had helped some classmates in college. And so I guess the seed was planted. And my intro video, I had retaken a class in college to be better prepared for calculus. And a classmate asked me a question, and I was helping them. And I looked up, and there was a whole circle of people around listening, and I was like, "What is this?" So it was a number of years after that before I started tutoring, but I think that was probably one of the seeds.
See, that's great. And so just by you trying to help one person, all of a sudden it just kind of your energy just kind of attracted everybody just to you, like, oh, well, what else does she know? And all of a sudden, boom, you're starting to do like in person or and then later on doing online tutoring.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you have like all your sessions, like what do you think that like parents are actually looking for when they're looking for a tutor? Like just people that were inquiring about your services. What do you think they're looking for?
I think they want to know that their child will be with somebody who really has the experience to be able to deliver the information in a way that would match their child. They want to know um, that I have the experience and the competency, the,
That's true.
the patience, the kindness, the understanding, but also um, a push when their kid needs it. You know.
Exactly. Because we all know like parents really want to do right by their kids, but sometimes they just need like just someone else that, all right, do you understand the concepts? Great. Can you help my child? Can you push them further? Can you make them, not really make them, but can you just like advise them or guide them for them to find that self discovery? Because parents just want to make sure that their kids are going to be all right as they get older. And, there's nothing wrong with getting a tutor. So that's why, we have this channel, or now it's turning into a podcast that we're actually not only trying to help parents, but also like to see the different types of tutors that is all around. And one of the things that you did mention that parents do look for, besides knowledge, is like someone that's going to be patient. That someone's going to be understanding, and that's a good fit for their child. Like we all know, every kid is not exactly the same.
Right.
So I mean, and when they look for you, they might need someone that is going to be patient, that is going to be understanding, that is going to also be that kick, that swift kick sometimes, just to kind of wake them up. Because we know, especially with our age group, like the older kids, sometimes it seems like they don't have someone to kind of push them along a little bit. Have you noticed that?
Somewhat. It's also a time where a lot of parents I've noticed are having their kids transition to initiating things themselves. And so
Mm,
I think more can come up in that transition period of, you know, pushing the kids out of the nest. And it's like, okay, it's time to fly. You're going to figure this out.
yes.
So,
Because you're so used to being the voice of your child for so long, when they're little, make sure you say please, make sure you say thank you. You're always that person that kind of did that prompting. And then when it's time for them to take over, to speak and to advocate for themselves, we tend to do it like in high school. But do you think that maybe some of the parents, like, how do you feel about, like, say, a middle school age child to advocate for themselves? Have you seen that in your sessions?
yeah, somewhat. I've noticed there's often a big transition between fifth grade and sixth grade where it seems like everything is provided for them up until fifth grade. And they enter middle school and they're expected to sometimes write their own study guides and know in advance, not be told every day what their homework is or that their test is in a week, that they have to study every night, or at least review something most nights before that week. And I've noticed that that is a big transition for kids and parents, for kids
Hmm.
especially, to it's like, wait, what? What do I don't have anything to do, and I and I'm
Right,
like, yeah, you do.
right.
Let's sit down.
Because that is something that we see a lot of. Like sometimes we'll have a session and the kid would be like, "Oh, I don't have anything to do," or "We didn't do anything in class." And I know that happens often for me. And I just feel like, okay, well, what is something that you've done that you had trouble with? Or like, I remember that we struggled with the fractions. So let's take this time to work on fractions. Or let's take this time to work on our multiplication so we can do our factoring a lot quicker. Um, and like, what are some other things that maybe you've seen in some of your sessions that can probably help a parent to kind of like look for?
Um, that's a really good question because I assess formally when necessary, but my s- I I assess my students during every session so that I can tell, um, are they struggling with adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, fractions, whatever. Um, some of the things I notice is I will either ask them to do a specific part of a problem, or I will notice that they're going more slowly during a particular thing. And then I use, what Well, that's interesting. I'm trying to figure out how I would articulate that to a parent. I guess if they are taking longer or not getting an answer correct,
Mm,
then there's something inside that. I can relate it to when students are learning to read or when they're reading a more advanced text, um, and you ask the student what they read and they don't articulate correctly what the main
mhm,
idea was, etc. Usually you have to break it down and look for those vocabulary words that they may not know because that's often the thing with comprehension. But math, it's the same kind of thing. It's like, well, what's wrong? They may know how to do that particular type of math, but maybe like you were talking about the supporting parts, the multiplication tables, and how to add numbers quickly or subtract. When those things are missing, they can be misunderstood. Like, as they may not
right,
understand the current math, but they may understand the current math and just not be able to do the supporting parts.
mhm. I mean, and that's like I was talking to another tutor yesterday, and she says I'm really good at breaking down certain concepts, but then when integers come in, I don't know how to really break down integers because she's like, I just don't know, I don't understand why. Like I don't understand like how does the rules play into it? Like say a negative plus a negative will give me a negative. Or like why does it give me a negative? Because it seems like a lot of the kids get really stuck on the why, which is perfectly fine because they're always asking questions. That's what they do. That's how they learn. That's how they grow their brains. Whereas we as adults would say, well, these are the properties, memorize.
Oh,
And it just seems like that's what's going on in a lot of the classrooms. It's like, okay, just let's go through it. A negative times a negative is a positive. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. Remember that. But a lot of the kids don't understand why. So, like, because I know I get a lot of kids get stuck on integers quite often. Um, have you like seen, obviously by you nodding, like you've seen that in your sessions as well. Like, how would you kind of address it?
um, I first of all remind them that most of the curriculum that what's that plural word? Anyway, that I see teach addition and subtraction, multiplication and division of integers, positives and negatives next to each other, one right after the other. So I think that
Right.
really kids don't really have the basis for understanding the differences yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, but since we need to match their curriculum to help the student, I mean, I can't just wait a month.
Right. Right.
Your home, we'll do tomorrow's
We don't
homework.
have all the time in the world. We wish.
Um, I have ways. First of all, I relate to them. I say that I understand that that's a difficult thing. That
Mhm.
it's difficult to tease that out when I mean, as you look at the examples in the books or online or wherever they are. And I remember when I was first tutoring, it's like, oh, now I understand those things. I don't know that they're always
Exactly.
written for students. I
Right.
think
And it's
I've
not.
no, and I think I've told plenty of other student tutors and students that if we wrote the math book, it would be 1,000 pages long because I'd explain every single step so that we would
Yes.
know because you're looking at
And
it.
have like a video attachment to it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I think really, and I have some tricks to tease out those things. I use the memorization of certain parts of it until the concepts are understood. I think it's much more difficult to understand the multiplication and division concepts of signs, but delivering the addition and subtraction as a concept is much more approachable.
Right.
So,
Nothing that's just easily breezed by. It's just like you said. They're trying to jam all these things up in like maybe a day or two. when in fact it should be like almost like 2 to 3 days, really constant practice with the adding and the subtracting, and then have like a couple, maybe a day and a half of doing the multiplying and dividing because they have very similar pretenses. So, but it just seems like everything is being jammed together. Some places, if some parents you don't know, for the upcoming school year, I know you guys just ended the school year. You're like, can we take a breath? I'm like, yeah, you did. You took 2 days. Okay, now we're back into it. But my
Yes.
thing is for next year, take a look at your child's schedule because I shocked quite a bit of my TikTok friends about this whole concept. That there's a lot of schools that's doing, like, say, a usual algebra one's like a full year, but they decided to do it for 1 semester. And a few parents wrote back to me. They're like, I didn't know my child's just taking a semester of math, and then there was nothing in the spring for math. It was just that 1 semester and then nothing. And they're like, I didn't know. Thank you for telling me this because I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, yeah. So they're trying to jam up a whole year of algebra one into 1 semester. So just because when you all of a sudden you see your kids' grades are not up to date, or not really up to date, but not up to the standard that you're used to seeing, there's a lot of changes that's going into the
Yeah.
classroom. So that's one of the main reasons why I hate to say it, you're probably going to need more assistance because it seems like more districts are taking hold of that because it looks great on paper, right?
On
It looks
paper.
great that, right? Algebra 1 first semester, geometry first semester, then you have algebra 2 first semester, then you could take college algebra semester, and then you can take all your math credits in just 2 years. It looks great on paper. But concept wise, like, do you think kids are ready for something like that?
I don't. Um, just like they're not ready for sixth grade a lot of times coming from fifth. I mean, some of my students have been kids of teachers, and which floored me. I'm like, you're a what? But anyway, it was great. But one of the parents came to me and she said, I looked up the books. They skipped a whole book. They skipped a whole level from fifth to sixth grade. And she actually came to me later and she said, my kid has her confidence back. And she said
That's
she was
awesome.
more grateful for that than all the math.
Yep,
So
yep.
that was, I mean, I've learned a lot from parents and from teachers. Um, and it's, I mean, I want parents and people to realize that semester long math is the speed at which it's done in college.
Correct. And that's what they're trying to do, more of like what, a college prep.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have helped if we didn't have the pandemic 2 years ago
Right.
and we
Right.
had that huge gap.
I'm glad you
Maybe.
brought that up because I'm still seeing things. I think that we don't know that people don't talk about it, and
Hmm.
some of my students have caught up, but I think some of them, I think people can still expect to see difficulties because of this, because there isn't really a good way to miss a half a year or a year of math and not have it come back to bite you. It's not like you didn't understand this one book in English class, but you get the rest of the language and you can study vocabulary. But if this one book was difficult, it doesn't mean that it's going to affect you in every other English class you take.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
the math will. I mean, I had a trig student. Just she started way too late in the year before they called me, and she could do the trig, but she couldn't deal with the fractions. And
Right.
this was a difficulty before the pandemic. So now I think there are more things that could have fallen through the cracks. And I, in no way, shape, or form, would blame the teachers because they were up against extraordinary difficulties. But I think the result is that the parent says, at our age, like we talked about, they're starting to trust their kids more. So they'll say, "Are you good?" And the kid will say, "Yeah, I'm good. I don't need a
Yeah.
tutor." But
Right.
they don't have any way to know what's missing. And that's not to be disrespectful to a parent or a student or a teacher in any way, shape, or form. But
Right.
they're but like you were talking about, what to look for, what to watch for, all of those things are not necessarily obvious.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes some of my students come to me for a la carte sessions, and some of them come
Mhm.
for regular work, and then some of them come for regular work and a la carte on top. I try to make sure that I tailor my work to what that particular family needs or wants.
Mhm. And that kind of goes right into the next part, what makes you unique. That is what makes you unique. You really take hold of what does that student, what does that person need? And just like you said, you do some a la carte. Some people might just like, hey, I just need help with factoring. And then you work with them with factoring and they said, okay, everything else is going great. Thank you so much, and that was it. That's fine. Or you'll have some students that are there with you the whole entire year, maybe even bits and pieces during the summer. So it's like that's what really makes you unique because we were talking a little earlier, like, well, what makes me unique? I'm like, it's gonna come out. And bam, it came out. Because a lot of people usually say, this is my price, this is what I do, that's it. But you take the person into consideration. You take the family into consideration. And, not too many tutors out there are doing that. And you're not just building up their math skills because as you were talking, it just hit me in the head like anybody could pick up a book, any book whatsoever, and read. And they can go anywhere. You can go outside, you can do that, and you can do that by yourself. But when it comes to math practice, some people find it very difficult. Like they're not just going to be like, oh, let me sit on the beach and do some math problems. And a lot of people just can't do that, or they want to do that, but they're just like, I don't know if I'm doing it correctly.
Yeah,
And like you can learn something, but if you don't have any additional guidance to say, yes, you're on the right path, keep going, keep building. All right, now apply what you're learning to another situation. But if you don't have that person to do that, it gets difficult. And that's why, with math, it's so important to actually have someone to give you that feedback. So go ahead and speak
absolutely.
on
Um, absolutely, because it's not that people can't figure things out, but you also have a number of hours in a day and a number of days in a week. Um, it's like with anything, some of us can figure some things out, but the amount of time it takes to figure things out and decipher where the difficulties are. I mean, why not
that.
have somebody who can streamline that process and who has the experience and the expertise to be able to say, wait, I know what you're missing. I know it's these three things, and I know we can work on those. And
Mm-hmm.
closing gaps, especially since a lot of people come, not a lot of people, some people, and for good reason, want to give their child a chance to do okay on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And if they keep having trouble, oftentimes we're in a position where it would have been easier to help them if we had met them 4 to 6 weeks earlier. And so We want, sometimes you can make a big difference quickly, but sometimes you can't. That's
Right.
a that's an interesting place to be as well. But yeah,
I
people
mean,
definitely need feedback. I'm trying to think of an analogy of, like, if you went somewhere else to a grocery store and the food was different, you wouldn't know what to do with it necessarily. It takes
right.
time, experience, and becoming familiar with what those things are and how to deal with them. It's similar to math.
Hmm. Because even that important word that you said, feedback, because there's like, I kept hearing almost every session this year is that I don't know because my teacher doesn't give me the test back. I don't know. I know I got this as a grade because I see the grade in the grade book, but they don't give the test back. So I don't know what's missing. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know how to study for the next one. So it's almost like, okay, well, let's just work on the facts. And that's what we basically do. And sometimes I will throw some ringers at them because that's what I used to teach. If I taught algebra 2, I knew algebra 2, and I'm like, all right, you're going to see this next. You're going to possibly see this next, depending on how the teacher is kind of going. And that helped a lot of my students because I didn't just work on what we're currently working on, but I kind of helped on like what you're possibly going to see next. But that's the one thing that we can discuss to our parents, to our students. But the thing that is always missing is that they don't get the feedback from their teachers that often because I guess they're told that we're going to be using these tests over and over again, and we don't want them to take the test, copy the answers down, and sell it to someone else for like what, $25, which you're going to get what for $25. Um, so it just seems like a lot of our kids just generally just want some kind of feedback. Like, am I on, like I said, kind of guidance? Am I on the right road? So that's where I think tutoring kind of helps, and especially if you get a tutor that's been doing it for a while, or, and when I mean a while, it doesn't have to be, like 40 years. I mean, it could be like someone for, maybe a couple of years and up, that this is what they're doing. If they have previous teaching experience, they can do that as well. But there's a lot of good teachers out there or tutors out there that never taught, but they know the concept and they know how to break it down. So that's where you're just going to have to like play around to see which one fits with your child. And it'll be kind of nice because you also offer, you would do an assessment on the child at every session. Not to, I know I don't. I mean, like I would do some problems, but I'm not doing a full on assessment.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I assess because I can watch where they have difficulty. And so it's
Okay.
rarely, actually, I can't say rarely because I do ACT, SAT, but so I use a lot of assessments in those. But with the regular students, I assess
Okay.
them informally myself. I don't know, I just have a knack for being able to pick out where they're struggling. And it's like, I bet it's this. And then I can ask questions and say, I used to I used to say, Sylvan will charge you hundreds of dollars to tell you your kid can't do their multiplication tables, and I'll tell you in 5 minutes.
Right.
I don't know if I should have said that out loud.
No,
Um,
no, that's perfect because that's what generally happens. A lot of people will be like, "Oh yeah, you need this expensive tool and you need all of this." And I'm like, "Dude, I can just tell you in 5 minutes your kid needs to work on multiplication. Do a flashcards. That's it. Yeah.
yeah,
Practice."
yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah.
though, I mean, I am not anti-calculator, but I grew up without one because I'm 900 years old, and but we learned tricks, so
Mhm.
I have a more of a conceptual understanding of the math. but I also am the kind of person that needs to understand something 120% before I'll try it. So it used to drive myself crazy. I'm like, wow, that's really good for my students, though. Because I know it's like, oh yeah, I used to think that too. Or oh, I know exactly what's missing because that gave me trouble too.
And that's helpful as well because I was terrible at math growing up, and now I became a math teacher. Don't know how that happened. And now I'm tutoring because now I can connect with my students because I'm like, look, you're looking at me like I'm a genius. I'm really not a genius. It's like I just worked hard and I worked at trying to remember. And the more that I teach, the more that I remember. Like unit circle, I was like, no, mm-mm, not my world at all. Now, since I've been doing nothing but unit circles this year, I'm like, all right, go ahead, quiz me.
That's right.
And I'm like, just like the kids, like, yeah, I could do this too. But it is like a whole process. And with you having that understanding, that's what really helps that connection between you and your clients work. So it's not cold. It's not take out your homework. All right, let's do this. Okay, this is what we're learning. Blah, 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 blah. All right, time's up. Thank you. Bye. Goodbye. Like, no, like you have a little, you have personality with it as well. So I mean, that's amazing. So you got a few things that makes you unique, Jo-anne.
That's funny because I think it's my job, you know, to be able to figure out all of those things. But I like that part of it, though, the problem solving aspect. It's like, wait, I got you.
Right,
Let me show you
exactly.
this, and then they're like, oh, I got it. I can, oh, that's all it is.
Oh, that one, yes. Why did my teacher tell it to me that way?
I had a
I'll
kid
say
in
it for us.
college yell at me once.
Yeah, because that comes up every time. Oh, why is it so simple? Why do I have to do it like this? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know when did math become so difficult. But before we go, are you like some kind of coming attractions? Like what's going on? Or actually, I really should say update on the summer. So, what's going on? Are you doing any tutoring during the summer? Do you have any offers?
Yes. Right now, I'm preparing to help somebody with the GED, but especially the ACT math. I like to do individual sessions. I have some of my students prefer that, and I have very small groups. I want to do 2 and 3 kids at a time that are pretty similar in level. It's often good for friends because they can have very similar levels in math, and I've got somebody who wants to do a group of probably 2 people.
Okay.
I don't like them much bigger than that. But I lost a student yesterday for my ACT
Okay.
math. We were supposed to work for July. He got a 35.
So he's like, and I'm done.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I was so excited. I mean, it was a huge
That's
jump from the last time he took it. And so I'm just like, oh, this is so amazing. So
what did he have from the last time, if I may be so bold?
I think at 28
That's huge.
in math, and he went to 35. He got his number. Yes. He's like, before I schedule it, can I get my scores back? I'm like, sure. And he sent it to me, and it was a 35 in math. I'm like, wow.
See? And that's a celebration. That should be a celebration for you. That's
Oh, of
amazing.
course it is. Yeah. I remember when I first started doing this work, like 100 of those 900 years ago, I said to my mom, I said, I'm trying to lose my students.
But here's the thing, now that he's going to be an advocate for you. He's going to be basically like an ambassador to your business. So if he knows there's someone else that has to do the ACT or the SAT, they know exactly where to go to. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think so. I was also his Algebra 2 tutor. And so, and that's mostly the level that the ACT hits and the
Mhm.
SAT. So um, he was really nice about it because he's like, I could never have done this without you. And I was like, I always, no, you did it. But I helped.
You did. You did help. That's awesome. Oh, that's great. Well,
Yeah.
if anything, like roughly, I'm gonna put this together, but how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to, render your services?
Oh, tutorformathandmore.com or tutorformathandmore@gmail.com and with the number 4.
Okay.
And then
So
I have
just
a,
like I have it right here.
yeah,
Go ahead.
except add a dot, lose the spaces, add a period and gmail.com or just .com um, should come up in a Google search as well.
Yes.
My phone number is on there for texting or calls,
Okay.
etc.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate you, Jo-anne. I mean, we know Jo-anne forever, but here's my thing. I've never like say her last name. I always said her first name because I was like, and I was like Ventevogel.
Yeah.
Did I do it?
Yeah, you did.
See? Practice. It takes practice, people. All right. Well,
I can
thanks
tell
again,
when I get
Jo-anne. And
referrals.
if you guys, yeah, if you
I'm sorry.
need any assistance for over the summer, either myself or Jo-anne, please do not hesitate to reach out. And like we said, as school starts, before you know it, I mean, we're here close to the end of June. And before you know it, it's time for you guys to come back, especially, North Carolina. You guys start at the end of July. So don't wait until your child gets so into fourth quarter to try to get some assistance. Some suggestions, make sure you reach out, try to get some tips. As you can say, Jo-anne said that she has a couple of tips that she can help you out. Take a look out and follow her. All right. So thanks again for joining us on Two Tutors Talking. And we're also on our podcast now on YouTube. We're on YouTube Music. Just go ahead and type in Two Tutors Talking, and you can see all the episodes, all 6. Look at us grow. Um, and you can actually get all the information that you need. If you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out, and we'll get back to you as soon as you. All right. Thanks again and take care and have a great day.
You too. You are awesome.